Hey kiddos, today we are going to discuss further into functions, but we're going to go a little bit more specific to linear functions. Word. Alright, so just some basic things that you guys should actually kind of already know. General equation, also known as slope-intercept form, is y equals mx plus b, where m is known as the slope and your b is the y-intercept. You have slope formula. Okay, remember slope is m, which is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Okay, should recall that horizontal lines, okay, are zero slopes. Their equations, okay, are going to look like y equals some number. All right. And then, all right, let's go to vertical lines. Vertical lines are undefined slopes. So because of the fact that they have no slope, their equations are very unique because they actually begin with x equals whatever number that it's crossing the x-axis, okay, for your vertical lines. Parallel lines, two lines with the same slope, very important for you to know that. And then perpendicular lines are lines that are opposite reciprocals of each other. So if I have, for example, -2, the opposite reciprocal would be to make my new answer positive and then flip 2, which would become 1 over 2. All right, moving on. So sketch a graph of the following linear functions. So notice all I did here was I changed f of x to y. Okay, so that's something that we've talked about before with function notation. F of x is the same thing as saying y. So I have y equals -2x minus 4. First thing that you need to figure out is what is your slope. And your slope will give you your rise over run. And then you need to figure out what is your y-intercept, because that's going to be the first point that you plot. You begin with the y-intercept. So slope here is -2. So your rise over run is going to be -2 over 1, which means rise, if it's negative, you go down. If it's positive, you go up. When you run, if it's positive, you go right. If it's negative, you go left. And then B, your y-intercept here is at -4. So first thing, like I said, that you plot is your y-intercept. Now remember, we need to be on the y-axis if we're plotting the y-intercept. That should hopefully make sense. So I'd put a point right there. Now, I'm using my rise over run, and over here it's -2 over 1, so that means I'm going to rise, but it's negative, so I'm actually going to go D for down, and then my run is a positive 1, so I'm going to go to the right. So I'm going to go down 2 to the right 1, down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1. Notice I can actually also go the opposite direction from my y-intercept, and I can go up 2, but left 1, up 2, left 1, up 2, left 1, okay? And the final piece of the puzzle here would be to actually draw a line connecting all of your fabulous points. All right, number 2, I want you guys to do that on your own. Please note that there's no number actually in front of x, so that should be understood to be a 1. So to help you out, your rise then, or your slope is 1, so your rise is going to be 1 over 1, which means that you're going to be going up 1 and to the right 1. Make sure you plot your y-intercept first. Okay, so don't forget to plot your y-intercept first. All right, number 3, we have a x equals -1. Hopefully you recall when I talked about vertical lines that those were very unique lines because those equations began with x. And that's the same case here. So automatically I know that the slope is no slope. Okay, so that means I don't really have to worry about a rise over run because it has no slope. Now, it also does not have a y-intercept. What it does have is an x-intercept. And the x-intercept is going to be at that value that it's equal to, which is -1. So that is where we would put our first point, at x is -1. Now, this is a very simple line to draw because it begins with x. I automatically know that it is a vertical line, straight, don't make it squiggly, that goes through x being -1. Number 4, y equals 2. Notice there is no x in this, so that tells me that my slope is going to be a 0 slope. So when I rise, it'd be 0 over 1. So I'd be going up 0, but to the right 1. The y-intercept is going to be 2. So I go to the y value and I plot my point at 2. And like my directions say, I go up 0, so I don't go up or down, but I do move to the right 1 unit, right 1 unit, right 1 unit, right 1 unit. So you can clearly see that this is going to create what we like to call the horizontal line. Now we're going to be looking at equations and writing what their function would be. What would be their linear equation? So notice it's very important to always pick out 2 points. So 2 points have already been picked out in this picture, and we're going to figure out what the rise over run is and what the y-intercept is. I always like to be in the habit of beginning with the y-intercept because that usually tends to be the easiest. So the y-intercept is where that line intersects the y-axis, which is at this point, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my y-intercept is 7. So now from the first point to get to this point, I'm going to go rise. So I'm going to go up or down is the question. I know I'm going up, so it's going to be a positive value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going up 7. Then I put a plus 7. And then I am going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. So that's also positive. So I get that my slope is 7 over 5. So when I write the equation, it's y equals 7 over 5x plus the y-intercept, which was 7. All right, number 6. I'm going to actually let you guys do this one on your own. Be sure to identify your y-intercept first and then follow your directions. Remember, if you go down, it's negative. If you go to the left, it's negative. If you go up, it's positive. If you go to the right, it's positive. So remember that when you're using your rise over run. And then don't forget to write your final equation. Point slope formula. This again is something that you learned way back when in algebra, probably 1, and probably used it again in algebra 2. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. It's very useful, but what you have to have in order to be able to use this formula is you have to have a slope, okay, which is your m, and you have to have a given point, okay, which would be your x1, y1. And then we would just solve, okay, and that's how you can discover new equations for particular lines. So find the slope and then write the equation on the line containing these 2 points. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Notice I've already taken the time to write out those 2 points and label them. I picked this as first point. This is the second point. So first thing I have to do is figure out what the slope is. So we would have y2, so that's 1 minus y1 over x2, 4 minus x1. So when I work that out, we get negative 5 over 2. You can't reduce it, so that would stay as our answer. Then we would plug this into this formula here, and we can pick any point. So you can use whichever point you want, completely up to you. I would try to avoid negatives at all costs, but notice neither one of these have negatives, so I'm going to go with the 4, 1. AKA also, I don't know why I said AKA, but FYI is what I meant to say. Some of you may recall using stat. That is a function that you can actually use in your calculator to actually work out this same type of problem. Okay, so stat will give you the slope if you forget how to do this. Okay, so here we go. Y minus y1. So I picked, remember, this point here, so the y value is 1 equals negative 5 over 2 x minus 4. So notice you have to distribute the negative 5 over 2, and I'm going to work that out on the next slide so I have a lot more space because I don't know why I can't make my font size smaller, so it's really getting irritating. So, all right, sorry about that. So we have y minus 1 equals negative 5 over 2 times x minus 4. So I brought down the y minus 1 equals. I did negative 5 over 2 times x, and I got negative 5 over 2x. And then negative 5 over 2 times negative 4, when I work that out, gives me a positive 10. Okay, so now I got to get y by itself. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and I put the plus 1 underneath the plus 10. And I end up with y equals negative 5 over 2x plus 11. So that would be the equation, the function for that problem. So, number 2, find the slope and then write the equation of the line containing negative 3, negative 2, and 5, negative 1. So, again, first thing we need to do is find the slope. So, if you have a fancy calculator at home, you can technically use stat. So, we have negative 1 minus negative 2 over 5 minus negative 3. Notice order does matter, so that's why it's very important that I label it, so that way I don't mess it up when I put it into this formula. Okay, so double negatives make positives, so negative 1 plus a positive 2 gives me positive 1. Again, double negatives make positives, so 5 plus a positive 3 is 8. 1 over 8, can't reduce it, so that's our slope. So now plugging or using this formula down here, the point slope formula, we would have y minus, remember you pick whichever point you want. I'm going to pick this point because it has only one negative versus two negatives. Minus 1 equals 1 over 8 times x minus 5. All right, now the nice thing here is that this double negative becomes positive, so this is really y plus 1 equals 1 over 8 times x is going to be 1 over 8 times x. And then 1/8 times a negative 5 is going to be negative 5 over 8. So solving for y, so I'm going to subtract 1 to both sides. So I'm going to subtract 1 there. Now, I have a negative 5 over 8, so that's a fraction. So I need to turn that negative minus 1, okay, that I'm doing to the side into a fraction as well. So I would really just turn it into, sorry, let me rewrite that part. So I am subtracting 1, but I would really just write minus 8 over 8, because 8 over 8 is the same thing as 1. So you would end up with the answer of y equals 1 over 8x, and then negative 5 minus 8 is going to lead us to negative 13 over 8. So that would be our final answer. Okay. All right, 3 contains 5/8 and parallel to the graph of y equals 7x minus 6. So remember, slopes do matter here. Parallel slopes are the same. So if in the original problem the slope is 7, then my new slope would also be 7. All right, and then this is where I have to use that formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I know that that's my x, that's my y. So we would have y minus 8 equals, our slope is 7, times x minus 5. So when we work that out, you'd have y minus 8 equals 7 times x is 7x. 7 times negative 5, negative 35. Last step, though, here is to add 8 to both sides, so we would end up with y equals 7x, which the slopes should be the same as you can tell they are, and then a negative 35 plus 8 would lead us to have a minus 27, and that would be the equation for the new line that's parallel to this line given. Number 4 contains 3, 5 and perpendicular. So I'm going to let you do this one on your own, but I'm going to help you with the slope part. So the original slope for this equation here given to us is -8. Now the new slope, because we want it to be perpendicular, has to be opposite that, so it's going to be positive, and reciprocal, which means you have to flip 8. So if you flip 8, you get 1/8. So when we were to work this out, so I'll help you guys plug this in, you'd get y minus 5 equals 1/8 over x minus 3. So I'm going to get you guys have an opportunity of actually solving this out to get the actual answer. All right, number 5 has an x-intercept of 5 and a slope of -2/3. So we know what the slope is, and we know that it has an x-intercept, but what we have to figure out is what is its y-intercept, because that is what we need in order to write the equation. There is a way to do this by using our slope formula. So y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1 equals slope. Well, we know what the slope is, so I got -2/3. What we need to figure out is what are the original y and x values to figure out the equation, but what we have given to us is 1 point. We know that an x-intercept is written as 5, 0, so I can actually use that information. So it would be y minus 0, because 0 is in the y position, and it'd be x minus 5. So what you would do here is, going back to our days of proportions, you would cross multiply. Okay? So if I were to cross multiply, technically if I have a -0, that means it doesn't really exist. So all I would be cross multiplying here is 3 times y. So you would get 3y equals, and then when we cross multiply this way, make sure that you multiply the -2 to both values, both terms, okay? So -2 times x gives us -2x, and the -2 times -5 gives us a positive 10. All right, so then from here, all we have to do is one last step to get y by itself, and that's going to be divide both sides by 3. So when we do that, we end up with y equals -2/3 x, and 10 divided by 3 is not going to reduce, so you would just keep it. All right, 6, it's a horizontal line, and it contains -2, 6. So notice it's a zero slope. So a zero slope means that it has a slope of 0. So it's a horizontal line. So if I'm imagining the picture, I know it only has an x-intercept. So all I really need to look at in order to be able to write this equation is the point that they gave me. What is the y value? It's 6. So this equation would then be y equals 6 because it's a horizontal line with a 0 slope. Number 7 is a vertical line, and it contains 5, 6. So kind of the opposite of the previous problem. Vertical line has no slope at all. So that means I know automatically that this equation is going to begin with x equals, okay? And to figure out what does the x value equals, based on the point they gave me, I'll just look at what the x value is. So this would be x equals 5. 8 contains 5, 8, and is parallel to the graph of 2x plus 3y equals 9. Notice the first thing we need to do is we need to solve this to figure out what the slope is supposed to be. So what we would do is, I'm going to box the positive 3y. We're going to subtract 2x to both sides. 3y equals -2x plus 9. Divide everything by 3. And the equation that we get is y equals -2/3 x plus 3. So your slope that we need is going to be the same because it's parallel. Okay, that is your x1, that's your y1. So you're using point slope formula. So y minus 8 equals our slope, which is -2/3 times x minus 5. All right, so let's distribute. So we'd get y minus 8 equals negative 2/3 x, and then negative 2/3 times negative 5 gives us a fraction of positive 10 over 3. And we're going to be adding 8. But remember, if you're adding fractions, you have to change that 8 to have a denominator of 3. So it would be... So it would end up being 8 times 3 is 24. So we'd be adding 24 over 3. Because 24 over 3 is the same thing as 8. Okay? But we have to change it to where our fractions have the same denominator to actually be able to mathematically work this out. So then our final answer would be... I know I just erased all of that, so hopefully you had that all down. So the final answer would be y equals, oh my gosh, really? Now it wants to go back to normal. That is awesome. Y equals negative 2/3 x. And then when you did the 10 over 3 plus the 24 over 3, you end up with positive 34 over 3. And let's see, can you reduce 34 over 3? No, you can't. So it would just stay as 34 over 3. All right. I'm glad I got this fixed. Yay! For next time.